I just like when technology makes things easier. One thing that I find fascinating by the blockchain is how profound the technology is. I think AI is about to teach people the value of the blockchain. I think as people are trying to figure out what the sources of the creative are that make the AI, I think people are about to really learn a good lesson into the power of the blockchain and what provenance and truth digitally that nobody can manipulate will mean.
My first question is, and doing this as a part of the exclusive contents now, what's your vision to VeeFriends now for the future?
Yeah, from day one, I viewed this as it's incredible to be able to build an intellectual property in a collectible ecosystem, a digital collectible ecosystem. And I want to do this. I've always wanted to build an intellectual property, but now that I can do it on the back of this really cool technology. Really, ironically, even though so much has happened in our space, not much has changed in my mind. literally, you can go back to the interviews I did earliest on, or the things I most tweeted or spoke about early on is, I want to build this IP for the next 50 years. I don't want to make it Creative Commons because I want to do it. I think of it as a multimedia world. So from day one, trading cards and toys and animation and film. And I wanted to ground it in, a smart contract that had utility. And so I was excited that really in a lot of ways I thought about on day one when people minted it, are you buying a ticket to 3 years of a conference with a collectible receipt?
Yeah.
Or are you getting a collectible that happens to come along with 3 years of a conference? So there's been an extraordinary amount of energy put towards building VCon, which I think we've done extremely successful. I would argue that the success of VCon 2, the one we just had, during a market of real instability, right? There's been a lot of up and down. There's a lot of anxiety with the world. I think everyone in the NFT space and the crypto space in general is yearning for clarity on legislation and rules, right? And so for us to be able to do that during this market creates a lot of validation to our mission. Our trading cards are really getting a lot of excitement. We continue to get plenty of, activity across the board. I think, coinciding with all the, things that are going on with waiting for the SEC and the US Congress and Europe and EU and, was so much disruption with royalties, right?
Yeah.
No. And so there's just so much going on all at the same time. But for me, I have to get people to fall in love with Patient Pig and Accountable Ant and Common Sense Cat, right? Much like Marvel and Disney. Like if I don't get people to care about those characters, well, it's not going to matter. Nothing else is going to matter. Yeah. And so I'm incredibly focused on building out the affinity and the intellectual property while I, like everybody else in our space, gets clarity on what we can and can't do, from a Web3 standpoint. And so I'm excited about it.
Okay, that's fantastic. And I understand your point of if you not build the brand and if you don't create the
demand
awareness, if people
demand, everyone's like, Gary, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I'm like, you're talking about creating demand in a very small window for a small group of people who are caring about the price of the NFT today. I'm thinking about demand for 8 billion people. That's going to take me a long time.
And you need a roadmap to arrive at. You need to think.
Yeah, and the roadmap, as you know, or you may not know, but with VeeFriends, I've never put out a roadmap because for me, the roadmap is I have to build as big of a brand as possible for the collectible and experiential part of this business. And that's just going to take time, and it's going to come in a lot of twists and turns from a lot of different places. And I'm not sure where that's going to happen. I think a lot of the things that I was talking about, not everyone in our space was in agreement with or thought it was the right thing. And I'm empathetic for that. I also don't think I'm always right, but I knew what the mission was and continues to be. And so, I'm having meetings, for example, of building out exhibit booths for Comic-Con and Design Con, and I'm having conversations on our YouTube Kids content strategy. Like, if we're not doing those things, the financial engineering or all this fun, like that's just not, it's not sustainable. It will die.
It will die. It will not have any momentum. No, and it makes sense. Like, I'm an entrepreneur and I understand that a little bit based also on things that I learned with you previous to being an entrepreneur. It's like fail, succeed, try. So having a very strong roadmap that doesn't make sense, may have sense today, it will not make sense 1 year apart from now. So it makes perfect sense. And
it's impossible to
predict.
Nike, Apple, Tesla, Netflix, they have a vision, they have strategies, but they have to adjust to the reality on an everyday basis. And so I think that I think of roadmaps as, marketing material that people put out, not actual business strategy. And I've focused on the business strategy.
No, I'm fully aligned. But that takes me to kind of a follow-up question. That is, and you were saying about the financial ecosystem for the system. Do you feel that there is a lack of tools for the NFT space, for the finance perspective, from, for example, lending options, or you believe that it will take that sense of IP / broader?
No, I think like the world, I think both are needed, and both will evolve. I'll give you an example. When somebody, to your point on lending, what you guys do for there are people who lend against $1 million comic book.
Yeah, it's true.
And it is a far more challenging and more friction thing to do. You have to go to a pawn shop or to you got to find like a needle in a haystack. You got to Google, you got to find someone. Then you got to go authenticate if it's a Superman first edition. There's all this stuff. Whereas in your world, it's all on the blockchain. The efficiency of what you're doing. And, these are just, I believe that all of these are inevitable outcomes. When I launched WineLibrary.com in 1996, people thought I was crazy that people would buy wine on the internet.
Yeah.
I knew that people were not going to buy wine on the internet at scale in 1998, in 2000, but I knew inevitably it was going to be a meaningful part of the world. I know that we are in a place where there's an inevitable outcome of for this technology, which is the genie's not going to go back in the bottle. So, all of this needs to be figured out. The governments around the world are clearly spending a lot of time trying to figure it out. Some are on defense, some are on offense, some are in between. But as far as the tools, all of them will be built.
Yeah.
There'll be winners and losers, just like, lots of people tried to start banks through the years. Lots of people tried to start credit card companies, but they will all be built and they'll be a part of our world. And I think, look, think about this. There are people right now who spend $4 million on art in their life, collectible physical art, who tomorrow will have a financial opportunity that requires liquid in a 1 week period. Okay.
Yeah.
That individual might be liquid poor right now, but asset rich.
Yeah.
They may need $1 million. And they don't have it for some reason. These circumstances arise where people have a lot of assets, but not a lot of cash. It happens. Usually with bigger numbers than I'm using now, but let's just play this story out. In today's world, it's hard for them to get money against that $4 million of art.
On spot. Almost
on the spot.
Yeah,
impossible. Yeah. Especially if it's within a week.
Yeah.
In the world that you're playing in, that won't be impossible, and that will be lucrative for both parties.
Yeah.
And so, obviously people default, there's bad things that can happen. There's risks that the lender takes on, drastic loss in value, like, which has happened in NFT and has happened in contemporary art, has happened in sports cards and everything, really. Antiques, coins and stamps used to have incredible value. Like, things change. Yeah. But I think that the technology existing is going to be cool. And that's what I believe in.
And I was going to interrupt in the past just to say that one of the biggest things that happened in Portugal, I'm from Portugal, by the way.
Yes.
It was a very big loan that happened against art, but it was a small fine print on the art that the art didn't belong exactly to the owner. It was kind of a foundation. So to recover, it was a nightmare. And when we look into blockchain, we see that those kind of errors can be kind of averted very quickly. We're saying like certification. The use case makes way more sense. Makes perfect sense.
I mean, one of the great emerging economies or superpowers could come out of being on the offense of new technologies like AI, VR, Web3, blockchain. And so the world is always turning. Yesterday's winners are not tomorrow's.
What take you here will not take you there. That's right. Very strong sentence and pretty aligned. Makes perfect sense. And thank you for outlining it so well. And you touched this last part on, I would love also to get a little bit of your view for the role of blockchain for digital ownership on art. So with ChatGPT, DALL-E, Midjourney, or human content being created in the digital world, what's your expectation from the things that you have seen on the last years pumping up, and what you are?
That's a great question. So you touched on the thing that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about, and I don't have full thoughts on yet, but it is intriguing to me, which is there is an incredible amount of concern in the IP world that these AI bots are scraping, stealing, and they're taking the ingredient, maybe the final meal looks a certain way, but the string beans and the sauce and the eggs and the batter and the honey and the salt and the vinegar and the, come from these places. And are they going to get their economic value from that? So copyright and trademark is a huge elephant in the room right now on AI creative, the Midjourney of the world. To me, it's very clear that the promise that most addicted me to the blockchain early on was the concept of proving provenance. And so for me, there's a very clear path of people putting things on the blockchain first to prove it, and then secondarily put it on the internet. To then allow for provenance and understanding. And so I am fascinated by this. Now, I understand the hypothesis, the macro, the how that could be. As you start getting into the how, like the execution of that starts to get into a pay grade larger than mine. But I am very consumer aware that the emergence of AI may speed up the masses' understanding of the value of the blockchain. Yeah. And that's how I see it playing out over the next decade.
Do you think that will also kind of spill off to metaverse, like Apple presented 2 days ago? Their new concepts, we are being bombed with the concept of metaverse everywhere. It's clear that blockchain will take a role on that, or you think that like the tech icons have already barriers in place to block all of these?
Well, I mean, look, I think what you're talking about, and this is, and everyone listening, if you're listening to this, I know this, there's a difference between centralized and decentralized servers. So to your point, I don't think the centralized servers of the world, the biggest tech companies, are in any rush to give up their leadership. But I think it's back to what I said earlier. I think it's a coexisting world. Do I believe that there will be a humongous VR platform that is centralized? Yes, I do. Why wouldn't there be?
Yeah.
But do I believe that there will also be a very large VR environment that is fully decentralized? Yes, I do. Do I think that there will be large social networks that are centralized? Yes, they exist today. Do I believe in the next 15 years that we will see a meaningful, at scale, decentralized social network? I sure do.
Yeah.
And so, I think most people in the NFT, crypto, or classic historical world need to start thinking about the word and instead of the word or. Right? Everyone, I think, is like, it's going to be just this or just that. Just this or just that. And I'm like, no, it's going to be and.
Yeah.
And it should be and. And the ability for it to be and is so real. And I hope people start to fall in love with and.
And they can, I love that concept as an engineer, and then make perfect sense. And I would say that they will kind of coexist and they will learn from each other. The good lessons that will pop from both sides will start to overlap. I think I'm very, very familiar with what you are saying. I would say that people like to say or because we are on a generation that has lots of polarization. People need clear answers for both ways. So it makes sense. We have 2 minutes.
I know we have 2 minutes, but I think to your point, politically, religiously, genderly, financially, interestly, sports, everything, to your point, the world's framework is or.
Yeah.
And I would argue that the opportunity for happiness and growth and, flourishment sits in and.
Yeah. I buy that.
Yeah.
And using the last 2 minutes, I have to say, tell us a very funny story from last VeeCon, something that really got you a joy or fun.
Oh, that's good. Well, a couple things come to mind as soon as you said that. One, I played rock, paper, scissors 3 times and I won them all. So I'm very excited about that. The amount of people.
Specific trick or you just do one random?
No.
Okay.
I just got lucky. Okay. No question, the thing I'm most excited about is how many people came and said they needed it.
Yeah.
They enjoyed it. A lot of people, more than one person said that it felt like a Grateful Dead or Fish show to me. So that was interesting to me. That was a funny story that comes to mind. I went out with my college friends to 3 a.m. one night, which is rare for me, but it was fun to relive those college days with those guys. After it was all over on Saturday night. That's a memory I'll never forget, ever forget. So that's a great story. My dad on stage, I've got my dad and brother on stage to kick off VeeCon. And I asked my dad to tell a business story that's interesting, just like you're asking me now to tell a story. And it took him like a minute before he said anything. And I was like laughing because I was like, Dad, tell a business story of how this. And then I said, Dad, I first asked him a very specific business story, like tell a business story of like something that you and I went through. Then I said, tell a business story of any kind. And then I said to him, tell any story of any kind, not even business. And so the crowd and I were laughing and me and my brother were laughing. And it was just a fun story. So it was a great VeeCon. I can't wait for the next one.
That's awesome. And thank you so much for sharing. Really appreciate it. So let's test our technicalities and joining the spaces.
Anyway, it's great to be with all you guys.
Well, the last place I was at is Indianapolis, Indiana, to speak at this awesome conference, also known as VeeCon. So that was a vibe. Gary, thank you for having us. Listen, your event was.
What was your biggest observation, brother?
The positivity.
Yeah.
Like I told that to my whole team. We're a big team now. I signed that to Nuno earlier upstairs. We're just hanging out. I was like, what I love about Gary V and what you've nurtured is a positive community. And that, of course, we've known each other, following you since 2015, I think, 8 years now.
Yep.
I've observed you. I see how you move. Good friends with Kranak, Tyler, and everybody else since day one. And I think it's always just, I always come home filled with like a really good energy and like happy. And I think this is the most important thing, right? Like I've obviously learned a lot. I got to hang out with a lot of good people, but it's really about like the energy that I left off with was very positive. Is that no matter the market, you've nurtured a very
well. I think that's an interesting point. Like, look, everybody on this call and listening right now, like everyone understands the ups and downs of the bulls and the bears and all this. Yeah. But again, being born in the Soviet Union, liking history as like the only subject I liked in school, like I think for all of us on this call, we can all understand like. Nobody wants their NFT to go down in value. Yeah, nobody wants, there to be those kind of things. Nobody wants to see a bad actor do the wrong thing. But in the concept of life, when you think about what's going on with 8 billion people on Earth, there's nobody who's listening to a Twitter Spaces in the middle of June 7th at 4:35 p.m. who, if they don't take a true step back for perspective and realize how fortunate they are to be alive and have opportunities, of course, maybe the things aren't exactly the way they want professionally. But for me, I appreciate you saying that, like at the end of the day, like I have very positive intent in everything I do, because to me, it's like, we get to choose. Like you get to choose if you decide everything sucks, you get to choose if everything's good. We were just on, earlier recording some stuff prior to this, you and I, because of the podcast Panther. This is really fun. This is very meta. Like, owns the podcast Panther. This is how I find this is why I got confused yesterday, brother, on the tweet. Right. I was like, no, I'm doing a podcast Panther, not a Twitter space. Like just all the twists and turns of like what life brings, but you get to decide your perspective. Like there are people right now who are happy because, and are living with a terminal disease. Because they have their framework and their perspective is that place. There are other people who are greatly depressed today because like their Tesla stock went down 2%. Like everyone has the choice to decide, their perspective and their values and the things they get out. And so I'm just, I'm grateful. I believe in practical positivity. I'm also patient. I know the twists and turns that come along with this. I didn't say that 99% of NFTs were going to go to zero at the height of the whole thing because I was guessing or because I was trying to upset people. It's because I was observing what I've seen before in pattern recognition. And like, I've never been more excited about this space because, it's going to persevere and the bad is going to get kicked out. And, we're also, look, for all the anxiety that's going on with, the SEC and the EU and all this, like it also means that we're getting closer to clarity. Like for me, and I'm sure every other person that cares about being in this forever, everybody just wants clarity, whether it's rule by code or whether it's rule by government or something in between. Like, I don't think anybody is like looking for anything other than clarity. And so I feel like things are progressing. There's ups, there's downs, there's lefts and rights. But what I'm focused on is practical positivity, which is I want positivity, but VCon would be a massive failure if it was like delusional, like everything's going to be okay. And who cares about anything? That's not what we're talking about either. Like you have to be practical, you have to be real, you have to be strategic, you have to operate, but patience matters, right? Like I'll give you an example, just looking at some of the faces on this Twitter space right now, Green Dog, others, like in my little world, my community, right? Organically, even though it was part of our strategy, organically, the trading cards part has gotten really hot, right? Like I was watching from afar all year, prepping for VCon, we got a lot going on, but like slowly but surely this community around, what's interesting about VeeFriends, which was very unique in comparison to many NFT projects, was there was always a physical component too, right? If you minted Series 1, you got 3 years to, and a lot of people even said to me, like, I bought it backwards. Like I bought VeeFriends for the 3-year conference and the VeeFriends was a digital collectible receipt. I bought Series 2 for the trading cards and the VF2 was the digital receipt and vice versa. They're interchangeable, which is so rad about NFT collectibles and physical items. But the cards just kept gaining momentum. And, like to me, what's so fun about building an IP that's multimedia is So the cards were quietly building momentum. Then it kind of hit a crescendo point at VeeCon. Then I was like, wait a minute, I'm like, I love cards too. So I'm now like fully like going crazy, more momentum. But what's been wild was 2 emails today of people now learning how to buy an NFT because they fell in love with the IP through the trading cards in the last month. One of them didn't even know who I was, NFTs or VeeFriends. There's a human who emailed me yesterday.
Nah, come on. Nobody doesn't know who Gary Vee is.
Bro, most of the entire world does not know who I am. But this person specifically is super interesting. This person literally wrote me a long email about
how did he got to your email? That's the first question. You got like Gary Vee at VeeFriends.com and you tried
No. This is what's interesting, how the whole thing went down.
Okay.
To your point, he just went over his friend's house who had the cards. He got interested in that.
Okay.
He got exposed to it through a friend and then really got into the cards, eBay, all that life. Then asked his friend and started getting educated, like, what is this? And the guy's like, Gary Vee. And he's like, who the fuck, what's a Gary Vee? And VeeFriend, what's that? Like, didn't really like know, which is amazing. And then now is like buying NFTs for the first time. And it really hit me because I'm like, this is what everyone is going to have to do, which is like, it's a long game, education, multi-channel, multi-platform, multimedia. But, you know, positivity will be all the VeeFriends themselves are built to scale positivity. There's a little bit of Care Bear in it. There's Care Bears, if you think about that. There's a little bit of Sesame Street in it. There's a Disney Pokemon in it because I want to do competing and battling and all that. But like, it's exciting to be building the brand, and VeeCon obviously is an incredibly important part of the process.
Listen, sign me up for VeeCon 2024, 29, 35, fucking 2069, Gary. And I will be there. And I'm sure Zarta Finance will be there as well. I mean, quickly, not to take it back a little bit, because I do have a few questions about art, like your take on art, because we hear a lot about your take on like NFTs, PFPs.
Yep.
Obviously, what you're building, VeeFriends, is fascinating. And having watched this literally day one has been fascinating. But quickly, I want to go to you because we just opened up the Twitter space and you guys were kind of doing this interview before that. But once you introduce to us who you are and what Zarta Finance is, because of course a lot of people come in here know Gary and they're like, okay, what's happening here? And then Gary, I have a few questions on like your takes on what's going on in the space.
Okay.
When Gary said there are lots of people that don't know you, that don't know me, I thought there are like 10 times, 1,000 times more people that don't know me at this moment. So it's okay. No, it's like I'm one of the co-founders of Zarta. I'm the CEO, and we are an NFT lending platform, the most borrower-friendly solution for it. So we allow, on a full decentralized way, for users to request loans using the NFTs as collaterals, and they get instant liquidity based on the trades of the assets with a fair valuation. And we perform these loans on a logic of maturity. So you can request a loan up to 90 days. You never get liquidated. You are a very big fan of a VeeFriend, for example, or some piece of art that you love, and you can request that loan. You have the time to plan your life, and at the due date, you have the time to repay it. And if you don't pay, there is a grace period, and we try to follow up to help the borrowers and the lenders. So that's us on a very, 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 very brief vision. I have expertise on blockchain. I was the head of blockchain at Accenture here in Portugal, and I work in blockchain since 2016. Worked with several projects on traditional finance and then several things around loyalty. So when you were talking about positivity and how all of this flow, I think that Web3 can be a very powerful enabler, and you are sharing on a use case that is real, that is happening right now with utility. And for example, we had the Panther that had a real utility for us. And it was an awesome experience that we could pull off to bring to our community. So very happy to be here. Very happy to have you here, Gary, and sharing with us a little bit of your experience and your vision on all of this.
Thank you, bro.
I love that. So you guys have fractionalized the Panther. We all know when you tell me positivity, I think it was positive panda, Gary. I'd love to hear that. But, listen, I know VeeFriends by now. But no, seriously, like, obviously, Gary, I don't think you need introductions on here. It goes without saying who Gary Vee is in the space. But just quickly, like, how would you say you're positioning VeeFriends right now? Like, obviously, you had a huge, Christie's auction. I think 2 years ago now, and you're seeing a lot of companies like Yuga going to gaming, Pudgy Penguins, and yourself, actually, with the plushies and Toys R Us, I saw which is thick, crushing the IP game. Where would you position VeeFriends in this whole like spectrum of the NFT space right now?
I think all of the brands you just mentioned, Yuga, Penguins, us, and pretty much anybody else who plays more in the character-based world versus, let's say, a Tyler Hobbs who had a big sale the other day. Tyler and those kind of individuals, XCopy, they play more in the Banksy, Beeple. Those characters play in the Banksy, Andy Warhol, Jackson Pollock arena. Whereas VeeFriends has always been for me intellectual property, and so gaming and animation, apparel, and collectibles is kind of like the arena, so to me, anybody that's going to play in this space that we're in, for me, it's, and what's been fun for me is like, I've been pretty consistent about this from day one. Like I am trying to build this. It's going to take me 40, 50 years. It's like real work. But it's very positioned in IP development, right? So, we're spending a lot of time thinking about gaming, both physical and digital. We're spending, a little bit of alpha that I can share because we usually, as you know, like I'm not big on like roadmaps or things of that nature. We're just kind of operating, but like, and this is not crazy alpha because I've alluded to this as well, but the timing's getting close. Like we're extremely far along with, our kids book execution. So I think you'll see a kids book from RIP pretty soon, which I think is incredibly important. I think it's a category we can win in. I have a lot of understanding of, author life and more importantly, the distribution and how to get sales and exposure and just strategic stuff like Boys and Girls Club and, school systems and, summer camps. And so I'm really excited about that. We believe, again, back to Yuga, back to Penguins, back to anybody else, World of Women's or anybody who's going to be continuing to try to expand their IP. I think every one of us are going to have different DNA of strengths in different categories. So I do think that VeeFriends, for me, really understands like what Pokemon and Magic the Gathering meant and how that played a huge factor. And so I think we're incredibly focused on collectibles, including Olympics and Disney. One of the things you might have noticed at BCon was there was a lot of pins culture, people buying pins of the characters, trading the pins.
Saw that.
Yeah. That's something you'll see at the Olympics every 4 years. That's something you'll see at Disney quite a bit. So we're going to focus on collectibles quite a bit because it's, it's A, how I think about NFTs as a digital collectible, and B, it's how I think about, a strength of ours that is maybe a point of advantage. Something that might have been under the radar for a lot of people was late last year, I announced a new company called VaynerWatt, WATT. That Watt part comes from a gentleman by the name of Eric Wattenberg, who was a top executive at CAA and at a Wheelhouse, a very successful production company that does a lot of stuff with Jimmy Kimmel and others. And so VaynerWatt is a TV production company. And, for us, animated, scripted, and non-scripted television, AKA, what's going on streaming. Look, the number one movie in the country for a long time here in the US was the Super Mario Brothers movie that just came out, right? And so for the last several months. And so, Super Mario, just to remind everybody, was a single character in a video game called Donkey Kong that came out in 1982. And so from that moment to today, in that 50-year window, he went from a singular character as the one trying to save the princess from the big Donkey Kong from 1982 to becoming obviously the star of the Nintendo revolution in 86 when that really happened, to now having $1 billion movie in the franchise. So to me, I'm thinking multimedia. I think all of that brings back demand to the original provenance, right? Like what's so cool about the NFTs is the original collectible. Like there it is. This is why I drew them. Like I didn't draw the VeeFriends because I thought I was the most profound doodler on earth. I drew them because I knew I was building something long-term and I wanted the essence of it to always be grounded to this place of provenance. Not only how it got minted, but that it actually came from my heart and my brain and my creativity and my hand. And I think, so that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. I'm excited about it. It's, part Marvel, part Pokemon, part Care Bears, and very heavily, I didn't realize this at the time, but I become more educated. I didn't realize how much Sesame Street this has in it. And what I mean for everybody on that is what I've come to learn about Jim Henson on this journey, I admire greatly, which was there was a lot of good intent behind those Muppets, and they wanted to leave a positive impact. As a matter of fact, Fraggle Rock, the agenda, the brief was to stop war in the world. Let's make a show that teaches kids about things that actually leads to the world trying to stop war. And I'll be very clear, I have incredibly substantial agendas with VeeFriends, which is I am proud of what I've been able to accomplish as Gary Vee, as bringing positivity in a framework of practicality and business, but I'm one human being. And we all know this. I'm not everyone's cup of tea. The cursing, the jersey, the confidence, the bravado, the competitiveness, the style of speaking. I'm empathetic to people maybe not loving it. And so I've done a great job affecting a lot of people positively, but there's a lot of people that can't consume my content because of how I roll or who I am. But with VeeFriends, I have 283 characters. If I'm not the vessel to teach somebody compassion, well, the compassionate catfish can do that for me. If I'm not going to be able, as Gary Vee on TikTok and Facebook, to teach someone that patience is everything, well, then the patient panda and the patient pig can team up and do that. If I can't teach people that ambition is incredibly powerful when it's controlled and comes from a good place, well, the ambitious angel is going to do that for me. And so my ambition for VeeFriends is profound, is to leave the world in a much better place than I came into it. And I think I'm going to do that.
Me and Farrak were not even born when Super Mario was launched.
Correct.
82, I was not even prepped or planned or nothing. And I believe that's Farrak also.
That's right.
Yeah, I was born in 94.
More modern. Right. And to make it even more modern, we can go to Pokemon, because Pokemon is a phenomenon that is even younger than Mario. But again, Mario was started by video games. Pokemon was started by collectible trading cards, right? Harry Potter, an incredible intellectual property, was started by a book. VeeFriends was started by an NFT, right? But to be what I want it to be and to do what I wanted to do for the collectors of VeeFriends, it has to be like the things I just mentioned. Batman, Spider-Man, these were started in the pages of a comic book. To remind you two, because comic books as a format in the world did not exist, 100 years ago or 120 years ago. It became a new format, right? So, people are not good at history lessons. NFTs is a new format, but so were trading cards, so were video games, so were comic books. These are things that get invented and then they become platforms to create intellectual properties. And that's how I see this.
I love that. So I kind of want to go into something different that I don't think you get asked a lot, but of course, kind of related to what Zarts is doing with the financing NFTs. I think, you guys finance like a Fidenza or whatnot, which is pretty sick. And, right? If I'm a fractional, right?
Gary was talking about the one that was sold on Sotheby's, and we performed the loan against a very similar one last week for 128 for a 90-day period. So it's coming. I see that we are seeing this news, and because people are starting to
me, I want to ask you, G, about what your thoughts are on the whole financialization of the space and art. You mentioned that.
I'll be very simple. We actually talked about this before when I was doing his podcast before. I just like when technology makes things easier.
Yeah.
One thing that I find fascinating by the blockchain is how profound the technology is. Again, I think AI is about to teach people the value of the blockchain. I think as people are trying to figure out what the sources of the creative are that make the AI, I think people are about to really learn a good lesson into the power of the blockchain and what provenance and truth digitally that nobody can manipulate will mean. So, I think as far as directly answering your question, I think about people who are cash poor, but asset rich, right? There are people literally walking around Earth that have between their watch collection, their sneaker collection, their sports card collection, and their art collection have a lot of value, but only have $129,000 in cash in the bank and have a $500,000 thing in front of them, whether it's a crisis of a hospital bill or an opportunity to buy a home. There's something in front of them, right? And, to go and sell a Michael Jordan rookie card or a rare pair of sneakers or a Andy Warhol painting or, that's incredibly hard. There's so much friction. How do you do that, right? Or how do you to remind people, this lending protocol exists in real life. There are pawn shops. There are, money sharks. There are high net worth individuals that do this with each other where, but to find it, all the friction, right? Think about what technology does. Do you know what friction it was to eat 100 years ago? To eat, right? Now, fast food, supermarkets, modern cooking, technology, stoves, and now we got into the more extreme version of it, Uber Eats and DoorDash, and there's no friction to have hot food in front of you in 2 seconds, but people used to have to go out and fucking kill the animal and eat it. There was friction. There's friction in taking your assets that you have that are real life assets and turning them liquid in temporary moments of need, whether crisis or opportunity. This is instantaneous and is mathematically sound for the lender. And it just feels incredibly obvious. And, just like banks became obvious to the world, just like credit cards became obvious, two things that people did not believe in, by the way. Again, I'm trying to get all the kids here on this, I'm looking at all these incredible avatars.
There's a lot of young people out here.
Well, no, listen, I really appreciate Brittany and and Vinny with his original jellyfish and all these people that are, hitting smiles and thumbs up and hearts. I'm looking at them while I'm talking to you. And I'm not sure that a lot of people have spent the time realizing that banks used to not be a thing and credit cards used to not be a thing. And so all these new things that we're all passionate about, they all got bought by the government too. And they all took time too. And things have to get figured out. But these technologies are profound and I'm happy for people. I'm happy for people that protocols like this are going to exist at scale. I would love, now that I know Nuno, I hope he wins. I don't know if his company won't, but I sure know that there will be 5 to 15 leaders in this. This is an inevitable truth. And what will that mean? Don't forget, we think of NFTs today as collectibles, but NFTs are other things. Let me ask you a question. When your home, when your title insurance and your deed is sitting on the blockchain and you have a big need for cash, do you understand how insane that is that you can put up your house for that? Your house is the NFT. Yeah. Your car is the NFT. This is going to give people financial freedoms that we never had before in times of need, whether that's opportunity or whether that's crisis. And the fact that I know that somebody is not going to have to incur debt on a hospital bill because they put up an asset that they have on the blockchain, and there's going to be companies like Nuno's in the world that are going to make profit on taking the risk. But, the good thing is when people get educated on this, 99% of the people are not going to lose their thing. Yeah. They're going to pay the VIG. The financial arbitrage is going to happen. Like a credit card company. Do you know how crazy credit cards sounded to people before credit cards? And so I don't know. I want to get over the day trading, the speculation, the bad behavior, the anxiety. And I want to get to how profound this technology. I agree. The technology is profound. Vicky's in here, right? I see her. A good friend.
Shout out to Vicky.
I adore her. Has an ice cream company. She has a store.
Yes.
The fact that, not that I want this to happen, but if she has a need for money, let's make it pro. She just really believes she has to buy something and it's a real opportunity, but she's not getting some cash that's coming in the month. The fact that she'll be able to blockchain her business, her ice cream store, that will be the NFT. And that goes into this kind of protocol. So it's not just collectibles, it's everything. It's profound.
And that's the real world. When you go to the other opposite way, it will be the same.
Correct, brother.
metaverse companies, gaming, everything.
Correct.
So it will kind of underpin everything that we see, that we touch.
Everybody right now is thinking of it as like a rare VeeFriend or a penguin or, you know, a mutant ape. And I see it as your home, your car, your company. Like, we got to understand how important this technology is. And the word NFT, the internet used to be called the information superhighway. And the way that everyone thought about it in 1993 and 92 was people going to this thing for information, like using a dictionary. Today, 30, 40 years later, we think of the internet very differently. Currently, we think of NFTs in collectible form, and it will be part of that. Collectibles are a major $1 trillion reality in the world. But the term NFT, just like the information superhighway or the World Wide Web, which is what you have the WWW for, became known as the internet. There's a chance that the word NFT might not even be the word because it's so early. But an NFT is going to mean a lot more than just a collectible. And I think a lot of us on this call here will be talking about that in the future as like, we were there when it was only known as this, and now it's everything that is an asset. And I think that's profound.
I'm sad that you lost the term superhighway information. It was way better than internet.
Cool.
I would say.
Well, listen, I apologize. I have a 5 o'clock that I'm already 1 minute late for that I'm
Do your thing,
late
G.
for. So thank you. I wish you all well. Have the best day. Mwah. See ya.